Lyra had worked on the mixed-species space station for almost 3 years, but she still did not fully understand humans. They moved too fast, talked too casually, and acted without the same level of caution her people believed in. Her species, the Pterillians, valued slow steps and careful decisions. Humans, on the other hand, walked like every hallway belonged to them, and spoke like every sentence needed to be fast and loud. Even after years of living among different species, Lyra still found humans confusing, unpredictable, and sometimes a little overwhelming. This confusion returned strongly on a quiet morning when the station lights flickered and the panels gave off a strange buzzing sound. Lyra was in the engineering bay, cross-checking power flow levels on her holo-screen. Everything seemed normal at first, just slightly unstable due to an energy load transfer happening somewhere in the lower decks. She was focusing deeply, adjusting small values, when she heard fast footsteps behind her. Before she could turn, something bumped her shoulder. She spun quickly, surprised, and saw a human technician, tall, messy hair, and carrying a heavy toolbox. He looked equally startled, as if he had not expected her to stand so close. Without thinking, the words escaped her mouth in a worried tone. "What are you trying to do?" "Human." The human, Jonas, blinked at her with wide eyes. For a moment he looked confused, then apologetic. He raised his hand slightly, as if showing he meant no harm. "I'm not trying to do anything to you," he said calmly. "I'm just running to fix a power leak before it spreads." Lyra felt her chest tighten with embarrassment. She had reacted too fast again. But humans always moved suddenly, and her instincts always reacted before her thoughts could catch up. She stepped aside quickly and nodded, trying to hide her discomfort. Jonas did not seem offended. He simply adjusted his grip on the toolbox and checked the nearest panel. The buzzing sound got louder. A low vibration shook the floor under their feet. Lyra frowned, scanning her screen again. Something was wrong. More wrong than she first thought. Jonas crouched beside the main conduit, opening the panel with quick, skilled movements. "The leak is worse than the report said," he murmured. "If the current jumps another level, it might knock out half the station's midsections." Lyra felt her worry rise. She checked her readings again and stepped beside him. "It is already rising. You need support." Jonas looked up at her. "You can stabilize the flow, right?" "Pterillians are better at energy balance than humans." She hesitated. Working together meant trusting him, and trust did not come easily to her. But the readings kept rising, and there was no time to think or fear. She took a deep breath and crouched down next to him. "Yes," she said quietly. "I can." Jonas gave a grateful nod and shifted aside so she could access the control points. Their hands worked in different rhythms, hers slow and precise, his quick but not careless. He passed her tools without her asking, as if he already guessed what she needed. The conduit hissed loudly, and sparks jumped from the edges. Lyra felt her heart hammering, but her hands stayed steady. She guided the energy flow through a safer path, channeling the overload into the stabilizer grid. Jonas positioned a patch module on the damaged area and held it in place. "Okay, now," he said. She tapped the final command. The lights flickered again. And then, everything calmed. The buzzing stopped. The vibration faded. The conduit's glow returned to a stable blue. Lyra exhaled slowly. Jonas stepped back, wiping his forehead. "Nice work," he said with a small smile. "Couldn't have done it without you." She stared at him. Pterillians were not used to casual praise, especially not honest, warm praise. She nodded gently, unsure what else to say. She noticed then that Jonas's smile was not mocking or careless. It was simple, sincere, and filled with relief. A few other workers came in, checking the systems. Lyra moved aside, still thinking about the moment when Jonas had looked at her like she truly mattered in the task. Most species on the station sometimes treated her like she was simply part of the background, a quiet worker who rarely spoke. But Jonas had seen her. Not just her work, her effort. Later, after the engineering bay returned to its normal calm, Lyra walked through the main hallway, replaying the moment in her mind. She felt something strange in her chest. A warmth she could not name. It bothered her, but not in a bad way. It was simply unfamiliar. She sat at a small table in the cafeteria, sipping a warm drink that humans called mint tea. She liked the scent more than the taste. As she took another sip, her holoband blinked. She tapped it, expecting a station announcement. Instead, a direct message appeared. Lyra, can you come to my quarters when you have time? Jonas. Her first reaction was confusion. A human calling her to his personal room? Why? Humans usually kept their quarters private, unless there was a repair issue or a serious discussion needed. Lyra felt her ears warm with nervousness. Did she do something wrong during the repair? Did she break something without realizing it? Or was he simply reporting something to her? She waited a moment before answering with a cautious, I will come. After finishing her drink, Lyra walked down the residential corridor. Jonas's room was small, located near the engineering sector. She lifted her hand and pressed the door chime. The door opened, and Jonas looked up from a small desk covered with scattered parts and tools. His room was neat, clean bed, organized shelves, and simple decorations. There were drawings pinned to one wall, simple sketches of stars, landscapes, and what looked like his homeworld. Hey, thanks for coming, he said. His voice was relaxed. There was no sign of anger or disappointment. Lyra stepped inside slowly. Is something wrong? Jonas shook his head. Not wrong. Just something got damaged during the power leak. He lifted a small, broken device from the desk. It's the translator the engineering team lent me. The surge fried half the components. Lyra relaxed slightly. This was normal. A repair request. Something she understood. Jonas continued. I figured you might know how to fix it better than I can. I don't want to return it in broken condition. Lyra moved closer to the desk and studied the device. The damage was serious, but repairable. She glanced at him. You called me here for this? Jonas nodded with a small smile. Well, yes. And also to thank you again. You handled the overload like a professional. I meant it when I said I couldn't have done it without you. Lyra felt an unexpected warmth again. It almost made her look away. I only did what was required. Maybe, Jonas said softly. But you did it well. She sat down beside the desk. He handed her tools one by one as she requested them. Their movements naturally matched again, his quick hands passing equipment, while her precise fingers adjusted delicate components. As they worked, Jonas spoke casually about things she never heard from him before. He talked about his home, a small farming settlement on a peaceful planet, where the nights were full of glowing insects and the sound of wind. He shared how he ended up on the station, trying to learn engineering to build a better life. His words were simple, but sincere. Lyra listened quietly. She rarely shared things about herself, but something in his calm tone made her feel safe. So she shared small details: how her species teaches balance before movement, how she struggled to adjust to the fast pace of the station, how trust meant a lot to Terralians. Jonas listened with full attention. Not nodding randomly, not looking distracted. He listened like every word she spoke mattered. It surprised her. She finished repairing the translator and tested it. The device lit with a soft blue glow. Jonas looked amazed. You fixed it faster than I expected. It was not difficult, Lyra said softly, though she knew it had taken skill. Jonas smiled warmly. You're brilliant. Lyra froze for half a second. No one had ever said something like that to her, not in her work life, not in her personal life. Praise from her species was usually indirect, quiet, and rare. The words stayed in her chest longer than she expected. Jonas set the translator aside and leaned against the desk. I'm glad you came. I wasn't sure if you'd feel comfortable. I was unsure, she admitted. Humans usually do not call Tyroleans to their private spaces. Jonas shrugged lightly. I didn't think of species. I just thought of the person who helped me today. The room felt quiet for a moment. Lyra did not know how to answer. She only knew that something inside her shifted gently, like a small weight she had carried for years was lifting. She stood slowly. If you need help again, you can call. Jonas smiled again, a warm, friendly smile that made her heart feel strange. I will. Lyra walked out of his room feeling lighter, confused, and quietly hopeful. She did not fully understand humans, but maybe, she thought, she was starting to understand one. Lyra returned to her duties the next morning. But her thoughts were not as calm as usual. Her mind kept wandering back to Jonas's room. The quiet space filled with scattered tools, soft lights, and the drawings on the wall. She remembered the way he listened to her, how carefully he had handed her the tools, and how his smile had felt warm instead of overwhelming. She didn't want to admit it, but she carried that warmth with her through the day. The engineering bay was busy with workers preparing for scheduled maintenance. Lyra focused on her tasks, but her concentration broke whenever she thought about Jonas asking her to visit again. Even during her lunch break, she found herself glancing at her holoband, wondering if he might send another message. But he didn't. And strangely, that disappointed her. She tried to shake off the feeling. Tyrillians were not supposed to attach their thoughts too quickly. Her people valued emotional balance just as much as energy balance. But humans seemed to move differently. They crossed emotional boundaries faster and made connections with less hesitation. Lyra wasn't sure if she was ready for that kind of closeness, yet she couldn't deny that Jonas's presence gave her a sense of comfort she rarely felt with anyone. While she was repairing a distribution panel near the cargo hall, she heard loud voices from behind the metal crates. A group of alien workers were discussing the schedule and grumbling about the workload. As she stepped around the crates, she spotted Jonas on the other side, climbing a ladder to check an overhead duct. He hadn't noticed her yet. Lyra paused, surprised by how her heart reacted. It felt like someone had gently pressed inside her chest, making her breath catch for a moment. She did not expect to feel such a reaction simply from seeing him working across the hall. Jonas finally spotted her and waved with a friendly smile. Lyra lifted her hand slightly, unsure if she should wave back. But Jonas took the gesture as a greeting anyway. He climbed down the ladder and walked over to her. Lyra, good timing. I was actually looking for you. She blinked. For me? Yes, he said, adjusting the tool belt around his waist. That repair you helped me with yesterday, the translator is working perfectly. I returned it earlier today. The team didn't even realize it was damaged. His smile widened. You saved me from a very awkward explanation. Lyra felt a small spark of pride, though she tried to keep her face neutral. It was simple work. For you, maybe, Jonas laughed. For me, that would have taken hours. Or days. She found herself smiling a little. You exaggerate. Only a little. Before she could respond, a sudden alarm echoed through the cargo hall. A mechanical voice from the ceiling announced a warning. Unsecured container detected. Please stand clear. Workers scattered quickly as a large cargo container drifted off its magnetic lock and began sliding across the floor toward the main walkway. The container was heavy, its metal surface scratched against the floor, picking up speed. Lyra froze for a moment, surprised by the sudden danger. She stepped back instinctively, but the container was moving too fast. Jonas reacted first. He grabbed her arm and pulled her out of the path just in time. The container slammed into the wall behind them, shaking the floor and sending small vibrations through the metal structure. A few workers shouted, and technical alarms switched on. Lyra looked at Jonas with wide eyes. He was holding her arm, his grip firm but gentle. His breath was slightly fast from the sudden movement. She hadn't expected him to act so quickly to risk himself like that. He let go of her arm slowly. Are you okay? She nodded, though her voice didn't come immediately. Her heart was beating fast. Not from fear of the container, but from the feeling of him pulling her to safety. You saved me, she finally said in a soft tone. Jonas shook his head lightly. Anyone would have done the same. Lyra lowered her gaze. No, not everyone. Their eyes met, and a quiet understanding formed between them, something simple but meaningful. Jonas didn't respond with big words or dramatic gestures. He just gave her a small smile, one that made her chest feel warm again. The engineering supervisor came by to handle the container issue, so Lyra and Jonas returned to their tasks. But something inside Lyra's thoughts had changed. She had seen humans be brave before, but this was different. Jonas hadn't hesitated. He hadn't thought about the danger to himself. He just reacted to protect her. She carried that thought with her for hours. Later in the day, while she was checking power readings, the station's main announcement channel crackled. "Attention all engineering personnel," the commander said. "A solar storm is approaching. Prepare for shielding adjustments and emergency protocols." Heads turned. A solar storm could cause significant damage to the station's energy systems. It could overload circuits, disrupt communication, and even threaten structural safety if not managed properly. Teams gathered quickly to receive assignments. Lyra scanned her holoband and saw her name paired with Jonas. Her heart reacted again, nervous, uncertain, but not unhappy. Jonas approached her once more. "Looks like we're a team again," she nodded. "Yes, this task is important." He smiled gently. "Then we'll do it right." "Then, I have a rubly." They moved swiftly through the station, heading toward the outer shielding grid. The corridors were quieter than usual, with people preparing for the incoming storm. Lyra felt her steps becoming more confident as they walked together. She kept stealing small glances at Jonas, trying to understand him better. Jonas glanced back at her with a puzzled expression. "Something wrong?" he asked. She quickly shook her head. "No. I was only thinking." "About what?" She hesitated. Tyrillians rarely shared personal thoughts easily. But Jonas had been honest with her, and something inside her wanted to respond in the same way. "I was thinking about today," she admitted. "You acted without hesitation. That is unusual for me to see." Jonas scratched the back of his neck. "I just didn't want you to get hurt." "Yes," she said softly. "That is the part I do not understand." Jonas looked at her carefully, as if choosing his words. "Lyra, you matter. You're part of this team, part of this station. I didn't think I just acted." Her steps slowed. His words stayed in her mind, turning slowly like gears trying to match a pattern. No one had said something like that to her before. Not in such a gentle, honest way. Tyrillians did not openly speak about valuing someone. They showed it through actions, not words. But Jonas's words felt genuine, not forced. They reached the shielding grid access tunnel. The lights were dimmer here, and the low hum of the generators filled the air. Lyra followed Jonas into the narrow passage, feeling a mixture of anxiety and quiet excitement. The outer shields required manual checks in several areas. Jonas climbed into the maintenance corridor first, then reached his hand down to help her. She hesitated for a moment, unused to this kind of gesture, but finally took his hand. His grip was strong and steady. Inside the corridor, sparks flickered from a damaged connector. Jonas handed her a scanner. "We need to redirect the energy before the storm hits." Lyra nodded and began working. Jonas stayed close, offering support and adjusting equipment when needed. Their teamwork felt natural, almost automatic. At one point, Jonas leaned closer to check her readings, and Lyra felt her heart thump again, but she forced herself to stay focused. "Lyra, can you hold that stabilizer?" Jonas asked. She held it firmly while he attached a conductor plate. The corridor shook lightly as the storm's first wave reached the station. Lyra steadied herself, and Jonas placed a reassuring hand near her back, not touching, just close enough to guide her balance. "You're doing great," he said over the noise. She looked at him, surprised by how calm his voice was. "You are very steady for a human," he grinned lightly, "and you're very brave for someone who thinks she isn't." The compliment hit harder than she expected. She turned back to the panel, trying not to let her expression show too much. Together, they secured the final stabilizer, and the grid readings shifted into safer levels. For a moment, the storm's intensity made the corridor rumble, but the shields held. Jonas let out a small breath. "We did it," Lyra nodded, feeling the tension leave her shoulders. "Yes, we did." Their eyes met again in the dim light of the corridor. The loud hum of machinery filled the space, But somehow, it felt quiet between them. Lyra felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Trust. Not forced, not cautious, but real trust, growing slowly, gently. Jonas tapped his holoband. The supervisor wants us to check one more section. After that, we're clear. Lyra followed him deeper into the corridor. She didn't fully understand why she felt safer with him than she normally felt with others. She didn't understand why his calm voice helped her, or why her chest warmed whenever he smiled at her. But she knew one thing. She did not feel alone. And for someone who had spent years hiding behind caution, that feeling was something new, something unexpected, something she wasn't sure she was ready for, yet didn't want to lose. The corridor lights flickered again, as another wave from the solar storm hit the station. Lyra steadied herself against the wall, feeling the metal vibrate under her fingers. Jonas checked the power scanner, his brow tightening as he tried to keep track of the shield's stability. Even with all the tension, his voice stayed calm when he spoke to her. "We still have time," he said. "The next section should be easier." But Lyra could see the worry in his eyes. Humans expressed emotions so clearly, even when they tried to hide it. Her species could hold their feelings behind controlled expressions. But Jonas's eyes, posture, and tone revealed everything he felt. And right now, he was trying hard to shield her from fear. She followed him through the narrow path. The storm outside wasn't visible from here, but the station's shaking reminded them how strong it was. Lyra kept glancing at Jonas, watching the way he moved from panel to panel with confidence. It impressed her. Most beings on the station would panic during a storm like this. But Jonas didn't. She wondered why. When they reached the next panel, the damage was more severe than the earlier one. Bright sparks jumped from the metal edges, and the energy readings were unstable. Lyra knelt beside it and began scanning. Jonas crouched next to her, leaning in to study the numbers. "This is worse," he said softly. "Yes," she replied. "If the energy layer fails in this section, the shield will lose 1/3 of its strength. That's not good." Jonas tapped the side of the panel. "We need to reroute the flow. Can you take the left side? I'll start on the right." Jonas tapped the side of the panel. Jonas tapped the side of the panel. She nodded and got to work. The space was tight, and their shoulders almost touched as they adjusted wires, replaced conductors, and balanced power levels. Lyra tried to stay focused on the work, but she kept feeling aware of Jonas's closeness. It made her heart move in a rhythm she wasn't used to. At one moment, a spark jumped out sharply, nearly hitting Jonas's face. Lyra reacted instantly, grabbing his wrist and pulling his hand away. He stopped, surprised. "Careful," she said quietly. Jonas stared at her for a moment before giving a slow smile. "Looks like we're saving each other today?" Lyra quickly let go of his wrist, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. "I only reacted, and I appreciate it," Jonas replied gently. She didn't know what to say, so she returned to the panel. The storm shook the corridor again, and loose dust fell from the ceiling. Lyra tightened a stabilizer clamp, while Jonas held a power cable steady. Their teamwork was smooth again, 2 different rhythms forming a single pattern. When they finished the adjustment, the panel turned from red to green. The shield readings stabilized slightly. Jonas sat back and exhaled deeply. "That was the hardest one yet," he said. Lyra nodded. "There will be more. The storm has not reached its peak. Thanks for watching." Jonas leaned against the wall, rubbing the back of his hand across his forehead. "You know, I'm glad I'm not doing this alone. Having you here makes it feel less terrifying." Lyra's heart gave a small, warm pull. She glanced down, unsure how to answer. Her voice came out softer than usual. "I feel the same." He looked at her with quiet surprise, like he hadn't expected her to admit that. Lyra usually kept her emotions hidden, but something about Jonas made her want to express things she normally would keep locked inside. They both stood up when their holobands buzzed with new instructions. The storm was growing stronger. They were needed in the upper grid next. Jonas gestured toward the ladder. "Ladies first," he said with a playful smile. Lyra blinked at him. "Why do humans say that?" Jonas laughed softly. It's just a polite gesture. It means respect. Lyra considered this. Then why not say both together? He grinned. You're right. That does make more sense. He climbed beside her instead, matching her pace. As they ascended the metal ladder, Lyra noticed the air becoming warmer and the buzzing louder. The upper grid was closer to the storm's energy. When they reached the platform, they both paused to take in the sight. The panels above them glowed bright blue from the shield working at full power. The entire structure vibrated like a heartbeat. Jonas took out a tool and tapped the panel's surface. Energy flow is high. We need to lock the secondary stabilizers. Lyra moved to the other side. She placed her hands on the cold metal and felt the unstable pulse. Her species had a natural sensitivity to energy patterns. She could feel the shield straining under the storm. It is pushing too hard, she quietly said. We must reduce pressure. Jonas nodded. Tell me what to do. She guided him, describing each step. For a moment, everything flowed smoothly. Then the shield gave a sudden surge. The platform jerked violently. Jonas lost his balance and stumbled forward. Lyra reached out instinctively, catching his arm before he could fall. Their faces came very close, closer than either expected. Jonas froze, his breath catching slightly. Lyra's hand stayed on his arm longer than she intended. The moment felt still, silent, like the storm outside had paused just for them. Thanks, he whispered. Lyra slowly let go of him, her heart uneasy and warm. You should be more cautious, she murmured. You're right, Jonas said with a small smile. But it's easier to be brave when you're here. Her eyes widened slightly. No one had ever said something like that to her. They continued working, though the air felt different now, heavy with an emotion she didn't quite understand. They locked stabilizers, replaced burned-out coils, and adjusted power valves. Lyra watched how Jonas's hands moved with confidence, how he trusted her instructions without question. She wondered if humans always connected this easily, if they always formed bonds so quickly, if Jonas treated everyone this way, or only her. When they finished the upper section, Jonas leaned against the railing, catching his breath. You know, Lyra, I used to think Tyrillians didn't like humans much. They like humans, she said. They simply do not understand them. Jonas chuckled. That makes two of us. I don't understand humans sometimes either. She looked at him, confused. How is that possible? You are human. I mean, Jonas shrugged. Humans feel things too strongly sometimes. We run toward danger without thinking. We get close to people fast. We trust easily. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes it hurts. Lyra absorbed his words quietly. They made sense. Jonas acted fast, spoke openly, and expressed his thoughts without fear. Lyra acted slowly, spoke carefully, and hid her worries. They were opposites, yet their differences fit together in an unexpected way. Do you regret trusting people? Lyra asked. Jonas thought for a moment. Sometimes. But not today. The storm hit another wave. The platform shook again, but they both held onto the railing. Jonas stepped closer to steady her, and Lyra didn't move away this time. Their shoulders touched, just lightly, but enough to make her breath slow and her heart race. They waited until the shaking ended before heading back to the maintenance corridor. The walk was slow. Not because they were tired, but because the moment between them felt delicate. Like if they walked too fast, it would break. As they approached the central junction, Jonas glanced at her again. Lyra, can I ask something? Yes. Earlier. In the cargo hall. When I pulled you away from the container, did it scare you? Lyra hesitated. Yes. But not because of the container. Jonas stopped walking. Then why? She looked at him directly, her voice gentle. Because I did not expect you to care. Jonas's expression softened. Lyra, I care because you matter. Her heart tightened. Her breath caught. For a Tyrillian, words like that held deep meaning. Too deep. She lowered her gaze, unsure how to respond. Jonas watched her quietly, not rushing her, not forcing a reply. He simply waited with patience, a trait she didn't expect from a human. A small alarm beeped in the corridor, reminding them there was still one final check to complete. Jonas smiled softly, as if the moment between them was something he didn't want to push too far. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's finish the last section." Lyra nodded and followed him. The corridor lights glowed softly above them, their steps matched without trying. And though neither said it out loud, something invisible connected them now. Something built slowly through danger, honesty, trust, and moments they didn't fully understand yet. For the first time in years, Lyra felt something she had almost forgotten. She felt safe with someone, and that someone was a human she never expected to trust. The last section of the shielding grid was deep inside a narrow maintenance tunnel. It was dim, warm, and shaking slightly from the storm outside. The hum of the power lines was louder here, surrounding them like a swarm of vibrating wings. Lyra walked behind Jonas, watching the way his silhouette moved through the flickering light. Even now, even with danger all around them, he carried a calm confidence that made her trust him more than she trusted the walls around them. Jonas stopped at the end of the tunnel, where a large circular panel pulsed in uneven strokes. "This one is definitely unstable," he said, kneeling down. "Storm pressure is pushing it too hard." Lyra crouched beside him and touched the panel. The energy pattern inside felt chaotic, twisting in directions it wasn't meant to move. "It is close to overload," she said. "If it breaks, the whole right side of the station will lose shield support. Then we fix it fast." Jonas opened a toolkit and began removing loose bolts. Lyra held the stabilizer rods steady, her hands moving with careful precision. The metal under them vibrated again, harder this time. Dust sprinkled down like falling sand. Jonas frowned, but didn't slow down. "You know," he said while tightening a connector, "I think this is the worst storm we've ever had." Lyra nodded. "Yes, but we are still holding." "Because you're here," Jonas said lightly, glancing at her. Lyra's fingers paused for a moment. She didn't answer, but something inside her chest warmed again. Jonas noticed her silence and smiled softly, then returned to his work. They worked for several minutes, their movements steady, each motion fitting naturally with the others. Lyra adjusted the balance lines, while Jonas redirected the energy flow. Everything seemed to be going well until the panel suddenly sparked violently. A loud crackle burst through the air. "Get back!" Jonas shouted. Lyra stepped back, but the panel exploded in a shower of sparks. Jonas reacted instantly. He grabbed her arm, pulled her into his chest, and shielded her with his body as the sparks flew harmlessly around them. The noise faded. The light dimmed. Lyra slowly opened her eyes. Jonas was still holding her, his arms tight but gentle, his breath slightly fast from the sudden danger. "Are you hurt?" he asked, looking at her carefully. "No," she whispered. "Are you?" He shook his head, just startled. Their eyes stayed locked for a moment, a long, quiet moment that felt heavier than the storm outside. Lyra felt the warmth of his arms, the closeness of his breath, the steady beat of his heart. Something inside her softened in a way she didn't expect. Slowly, Jonas loosened his hold, but didn't move away completely. She didn't move either. Finally, she stepped back, trying to regain her balance. "The system is damaged," she said quietly. "We must repair it quickly." "One," Jonas nodded, though his eyes still held concern for her first and the station second. They returned to work. The damaged wires burned, and the panel needed replacing, but they didn't panic. Jonas handed her tools silently, and Lyra worked with newfound focus. Minutes passed, sparks were replaced, circuits reconnected, stabilizers linked. The shield readings slowly returned to a safer level. When the final connection clicked into place, the panel turned a bright, healthy blue. Jonas let out a breath of relief and leaned against the wall. "We made it," he said softly. Lyra nodded. "Yes, the shield will hold, But she wasn't only talking about the shield. She was talking about something else, something between them, that had grown silently during their hours of working together. Jonas pushed himself off the wall and stretched slightly. We should go back. They'll want us in the control room to confirm stability. Lyra followed him through the tunnel. Their steps were slow, not because they were tired, but because something about the moment felt delicate. When they reached the main walkway, the station felt calmer. The lights no longer flickered. The vibrations had lessened. The storm was passing. People hurried through the hallway, checking systems, communicating through holobands, and updating logs. But in the middle of all the movement, Jonas and Lyra stood quietly, taking in the sense of safety that replaced the earlier chaos. Jonas turned to Lyra, studying her face thoughtfully. Lyra, can I ask something? She looked at him curiously. Yes. When the panel exploded earlier, you looked more worried for me than for yourself. Why? Lyra opened her mouth but closed it again. Her mind raced with thoughts she wasn't used to sharing. Terralians rarely admitted emotions directly. But Jonas had earned something she didn't give easily: her trust. Her voice came out soft. Because you have saved me many times today. And I did not want anything to happen to you. Jonas's expression softened. Lyra, that means more than you think. She didn't know how to respond. She looked at the floor briefly, unsure if she should continue speaking or stay quiet. Jonas gently stepped closer. Not too close, but enough that she could feel his presence. You know, he said quietly, I didn't expect this when the day started. I didn't expect us to work together like this, or talk like this. He paused. I'm really glad it happened. Lyra lifted her eyes slowly. I am also glad. Jonas smiled, a small but warm smile that reached his eyes. Then maybe, when the storm fully ends, you can come to my room again. Not for repairs, just to talk. Lyra's chest tightened, not with fear, but with something gentle and new. She took a breath. You want to talk to me? Again? Of course, Jonas said. I feel comfortable with you, and I think you feel the same. She nodded slowly. I do. Jonas's smile widened slightly. Then it settled. Before they could say more, the engineering supervisor walked over. You two are responsible for the stabilized sectors? He asked. Yes, Jonas answered immediately. You both did excellent work, the supervisor said. The station is safe because of your teamwork. Lyra looked at Jonas. Jonas looked at her. Both felt something proud, something warm. After submitting their final report, they walked together toward the residential wing. It felt natural now, the way their steps matched, the quiet comfort between them, the way neither of them rushed ahead or slowed behind. There was no awkwardness, no confusion, only a growing understanding. When they reached the point where the hallway split in two directions, Jonas paused. This is where I go left, he said gently. And I go right, Lyra added. Jonas rubbed the back of his neck. So, same time tomorrow? Lyra hesitated, not because she was unsure, but because the moment felt important. It felt like a new chapter opening quietly. She lifted her gaze and said, Yes, tomorrow. Jonas's smile warmed like sunlight. Good. I'll look forward to it. Lyra watched him walk away for a few steps. Then he turned back, as if he wanted to add something else. For a second, she thought he might speak, but he simply smiled once more and walked away. She stood there for a moment, letting her breath settle. For the first time since arriving at the station, she felt something gentle settling inside her, a kind of peace she didn't know she needed. Humans and Terralians were different in almost every way, but Jonas had shown her that trust didn't need to be complicated. It just needed honesty, patience, and kindness. As she walked down the quiet hallway alone, she realized something surprising. The storm had passed, both outside the station and inside her heart. Jonas had changed something in her, not by force, not by pressure, but by simply being the calmest human she had ever met. Tomorrow would come, and she would see him again, and for once, She was not afraid of what came next.